Without further ado, I'll hand over to my colleague Tal Rabina, who's in the chair. Tal, it's always great to see you, and the floor is yours, Goodna.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you all for coming and spending the time with us. We will appreciate if everybody can mute themselves so there will be no interference. It's always good to see old friends and some new ones to the another EIPA AMEPA briefing. And as Alex said, no matter what each one of us thinks about President Trump's vision for Gaza, I think we can all agree that this is out of the box vision or declaration at least. But for those of you who didn't notice, the last 3 hours, there was another post by President Trump, which shows that at least for the time being, he means business. So before we open for questions, Professor Michael, Kobi, before you elaborate on the vision and the implementation of it, let me ask you, is it realistic?
Hello, good afternoon or good morning, America. My short answer will be no, and my detailed answer will be probably no. I think that there are too many obstacles. I think that the Palestinians themselves, mainly Hamas, but not only, reject the idea and will not cooperate with that. But I think that we might see some, I would say, movements of migration from Gaza, not in the scale that President Trump was talking about. But I think that the consequences of this plan are much bigger, wider, and very significant, and I will elaborate on that later on.
So let me ask you the second question just for the beginning, which is, we usually see some differences between what Arab leaders are talking publicly and what they are telling the Western leaders in negotiations. May I ask, when they all say no upon what you just said, this time they mean it?
I think that they mean no, but on the other hand, I think that things were well coordinated between the American administration and these leaders, and Trump is prepared to accept the no, but on the other hand, I think that accepting the no means that they will have to deliver something else. And I think that this is the organizing rationale behind all the plan. I think that the most coordinated channel is between President Trump and MBS in Saudi Arabia. And I'm not too impressed from the immediate, I would say, reaction of the Saudis. I think that this is, in a sense, part of the game. And I think that all of the plan is a sort of build-up that President Trump does for the Saudis in order to reach to the normalization process and to the new regional architecture that reflects his regional vision.
Something like the annexation of the Judea and Samaria and then canceling it, kind of
exactly.
Yeah, the same story comes again.
They will be presented, or they will present themselves as the saviors of the Palestinians, the ones who prevented the migration from Gaza and prevented the annexation, the Israeli annexation of parts of the Gaza Strip, because as I assume that most of our viewers do remember, he was asked by the journalist, what about the annexation of parts of the West Bank by Israel? And they say, this is an interesting idea. Many Israelis talked to me about that. And in 4 weeks' time, I will introduce my position, okay? So it is a signal to the Palestinians and to the others that it might happen. And then the Saudis will prevent it.
So please elaborate. How does this declaration, whether it's a vision or a negotiation strategy, meets the Palestinian society?
It is a vision and not only negotiation strategy. It's a sort of a combination between of both. I think that we have to understand the plan in a much broader context. And the broader context is related not only to the Gaza Strip or not only to the Palestinian arena, it is related to the region in its entire, to the American states, and to the global arena as well. Everything is connected, and there are many interfaces between the different dimensions or arenas. Now, I think that what President Trump did is actually not less than an earthquake. This is a tectonic move, not less than that. President Trump actually threw out from the table the old chess play that was on the table and put instead of that the monopoly game on the table. Okay, it means that he didn't change only the rules of the game. He changed the entire game. There is a new game in town. There is a new game on the table. And in this regard, I think that President Trump eventually crashed the old paradigm. What is important for President Trump, according to my understanding, is his regional vision. And the regional vision is anchored in the new regional architecture based on the normalization process between Israel and the Saudis. Now, in Trump vision, the new regional architecture will be a very, I would say, advanced, sophisticated, effective, and efficient American proxy here in the region. This regional architecture, this sophisticated and advanced American proxy will keep the American interests here in the region without American boots or with minimum American boots on the ground, and will increase the economic benefits for America from the region, from the prosperity of the region, and from some leading players here in the region, mainly the Gulf countries, mainly the Saudis. And President Trump wants to close the corner here in the Middle East by establishing this regional architecture in order to move on to the other arena, which is Ukraine, in order to close that corner as well. And I believe that he will be able to close it with President Putin, and Ukraine will pay a price in this regard. I have no doubt about it. And then to be, I would say, in a position, even with a Nobel Prize, as the one who is the peacemaker, the one who stabilizes the international order. And with this reputation, he will have more support in America itself in order to do what he believes that must be done in America, and to devote all of the efforts in order to tackle the most crucial challenge in his eyes, which is China. This is the grand vision. Now, there is a sort of a disturbing fly on the wall, which is the Palestinians. And President Trump perceives the Palestinians as an obstacle for the realization of his regional vision. And he understands that all the old paradigms that we used to know since, I would say, the beginning of the Oslo process are invalid paradigms. And there is a need to change these paradigms and to bring something new. He wants to shake the boat, and he wants to take out the regional players from their comfort zone. I think that President Trump is fed up from the idea that the regional players, the leading Arab countries here in the region, are sitting on the fence, are holding the position of mediators and advisors, and all the time say what cannot be done. And if something can be done, then is the responsibility of Israel and the United States. And eventually, or actually, they do not contribute any essential or significant contribution to this burden, which is the Palestinian burden. Here, in brackets, I would say, this is my personal interpretation. I'm not sure that President Trump has the historical vision in this regard or the historical perspective in this regard. I think that what we see now, it is a sort of a poetic historical justice. And why? Because the Arab countries are responsible to the creation of the Palestinian problem, and if not to the creation of the Palestinian problem, at least to the empowering of the Palestinian problem during the years, and using the Palestinian issue as a leverage or a tool against Israel. And eventually, we have to remember that the Egyptians controlled the Gaza Strip for 19 years, since 48 to 67, as well as the Jordanians controlled the West Bank from 1948 to 1967, and they didn't decide to establish an independent Palestinian state. And the idea that the Egyptians and the Jordanians are telling everybody that they cannot accept Palestinians or to host Palestinians because this is a very severe security danger for them and for the stability of their regimes, but it is okay that this security threat will remain on the borders of Israel and Israel will be exposed to another October 7th. This is okay. So in this regard, I think that what we see now, what we are witnessing now, is a sort of a historical poetic justice that is made or in being. And here I close the brackets. And I'm going back to Trump and the organizing rationale behind his plan, at least as far as I understand it. Now, I'm not sure that President Trump believed that his vision with regard to the new Riviera in the Middle East in the Gaza Strip can be realized. I'm sure, on the other hand, that this is not a spontaneous move. He was thinking and planning this move even before his inauguration. And we know that in December, his envoys met Egyptians and Jordanian officials in Jordan in order to discuss this plan. It is not something that came out a day before the meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu. This is something that he thought about long before. And I think that he positioned himself in a position that says to the Arab leaders, okay, if you are not pleased with this idea, please provide us with your ideas. What do you think that can be done in this regard? And I want to see you under the stretch, as we say in Hebrew, okay? You have to be part of the solution. You have to contribute essential and significant contribution. The burden, the Palestinian burden, cannot remain only the Israeli burden or only the Israeli and the American burden. You have responsibility in this regard, and I expect you to come and to be under the stretch together with the Israelis and together with us. And I think that eventually what we see here is that the Palestinians are under enormous stress. The Arab countries, mainly Egypt and Jordan, under enormous stress, and they understand that they must do something. And when you ask me, Tal, what is the meaning or do they mean no when they say no? I think that when they say no, they know that they will have to provide something else. President Trump will not accept pure no. Will not accept pure no. They will have to deliver. And this is the dramatic change. Now, I think that President Trump signals to the Palestinians, be it Hamas in the Gaza Strip or the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, you are going to pay a price. Hamas, you attacked Israel, you massacred, you butchered Jews on October 7th, you are going to pay a price. You are not going to be in the Gaza Strip. You, the Palestinian Authority, you, Abu Mazen, will continue to say no to everything and will continue to remain in a refusal position. You are going to pay a price. You know,
Kobi,
when President Trump...
Kobi, I would like to interrupt in this very point because I see that Elliot from the Janes has a question regarding this very subject. Elliot, can you please unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Tal. Can you hear me?
Yeah, of course.
Yes, I hear you.
Hi. Thanks for speaking with us. Yeah, I just wondered, do we have any, almost from a technical perspective, like, do we have any idea about sentiment inside the Gaza Strip about whether or not people will actually want to leave, given the opportunity? Even in an ideal scenario where there's kind of internationally funded, excellent refugee camps with great, and guarantees that they will be allowed to return. Do we even know that anyone will want to leave, given the chance?
Yes, I think that the vast majority are willing to leave. And I think that more than the vast majority will be willing to leave if they will be guaranteed that they will be able to return after the reconstruction process. But we have to understand that such a reconstruction process is not less than 15 years, okay? And, before October 7th, and according to the polls of Khalil Shkaki, more than 40% of the population of Gaza, of the Gaza Strip, say that they are interested in immigrating or leaving the Gaza Strip. 40%, even a bit more than 40%, before October 7th. Now, what is exactly the reality or the situation that these populace, the Palestinians of the Gaza Strip, are facing these days? There is nothing in the Gaza Strip. I mean, something like 65 or 70% of the buildings and the civilian facilities in the Gaza Strip are destroyed. All the civil services are in a very low level of efficiency. They understand that as long as Hamas remains as the sovereign power in the Gaza Strip, 1 cent will not enter to the Gaza Strip and there will be no reconstruction process. And they understand that they actually have no future in the Gaza Strip under the current circumstances. So why to remain there in the Gaza Strip? Mainly if they have the option to leave to a better place, and they know that they have the guarantee to return to their reconstructed homes in the Gaza Strip, the new Riviera of the Middle East, after the reconstruction. But there are many other obstacles that will prevent them from doing that. Mainly their leadership. And as long as Hamas will remain there in the Gaza Strip, they will be prevented from doing that by force. They will be killed by Hamas.
No, Moshe Applebatt asking regarding this very issue, wouldn't it be more realistic to offer the Palestinians more space in Gaza by leasing land in Sinai from Egypt or land swap with Israel?
I'm not sure that it is more realistic. I'm sure that it is more reasonable. And by the way, such ideas were presented by several people, including General Gior Island some years ago. But I don't see the Egyptians willing to do something like that. And it doesn't matter with regard to the Gaza Strip itself under the current circumstances, because the Gaza Strip now is a demolished place. I mean, it's something that should be reconstructed in a very fundamental manner. And it is very hard, almost impossible to do that where almost 2 million people are there. This is the most populated area in the world, 365 square kilometers with something like 2 million people. How exactly you can reconstruct such a place when you have to demolish everything? Okay, because something like 62 to 65% of the residential buildings and the civilian facilities are destroyed, but the other or most of the other buildings and the facilities are in a very bad conditions. Okay, so almost 90% of the entire Gaza Strip is demolished. So how exactly it can be reconstructed where 2 million people live there?
Thank you. Let's jump to the other side of the ocean. Kyla, please unmute yourself. Kyla Gaskin?
Hi, yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, very well. Please ask your question.
Yes, so there's been a lot of reactions, obviously, in the coming days with from Republican lawmakers here in the United States. You would call it a lukewarm reaction, calling it a fresh idea, but likely not going to happen. Some GOP senators have just flat out come out against it. A number of them actually have done that. Do you think that takes any of the power away from Trump's proposal and his idea and him saying this is what we want to do when he has his upcoming meetings with the King of Jordan and the leader of Egypt in the coming weeks? And he needs regional powers, right, to get on board to make this Gaza rebuild a reality. So do you think it takes some of his negotiating power away there with this internal opposition?
Yes. I think that he has a very significant leverage over the Egyptians and the Jordanians. The Jordanians are totally dependent on the United States, and they are even in a worse condition in comparison to Egypt. Egypt has maybe some alternatives, but they are, I would say, imaginary alternatives. The idea of China or Russia that can replace the United States is something that is not so realistic in my eyes. And I think that, as President Trump said, and he has a real estate approach, a transitionary approach. Okay, he said we help the Egyptians and the Jordanians. Now they have to help us. Okay, everything must be balanced. Okay, there are no free meals in his eyes. We helped you. Now you have to help us, and we will continue helping you. We will continue helping you. And I'm not sure that it will be ended with Palestinians that will come and live in Egypt or in Jordan, at least not in big numbers. But I think that he wants them. First, he wants Egypt to enable Palestinians to move from the Gaza Strip to other places via Masr or through Egypt. Sorry, spoken in Arabic.
Masr is the Arabic word for Egypt.
Yes, because at least for now, President Sisi said that he will not allow that. Okay. Here in brackets, I would say that now there are something between 150,000 to 200,000 Palestinians from Gaza who are located in Egypt, okay, that moved from the Gaza Strip for a lot of money that was paid to the Egyptians, $10,000 for one person that was paid to the Egyptians in order to leave the Gaza Strip and to reach Egypt, and they are in Egypt. But President Sisi said that he will not allow. And I assume that what President Trump is expecting President Sisi is, first of all, to enable the move of Palestinians once it will take place. Secondly, I think that President Trump wants President Sisi and King Abdullah II to be, I would say, less against the plan. Okay, that they will lower their voice in this regard, or their criticism in this regard. And I think that he has a leverage on them. And I think that eventually, if they will remain, or if they will continue insisting to remain against the plan, and it will be in a very vocal manner, they will pay a very high price.
So Daniela from Daniela Brink for Spain, I see she has a follow-up question regarding the two states, Egypt and Jordan. Daniela, please unmute yourself.
Hi.
Daniela? Hi, please go ahead.
Yeah, I would like you, Mr. Michael, you to explain us what are the reasons behind Egypt and Jordan refusal. We understand that this is a playing game, but why? Can you maybe elaborate on the Black September or the refusal during the war of Egypt to allow Palestinians from moving from Rafah to Egypt and so on? Thank you so much.
Kobi, I would just, with your permission, add, maybe not all of our friends here realize the relationship between the Egyptian regime and the Muslim Brotherhoods, which Hamas is in a way part of.
Yes. I think that the main reason for both leaders, President Sisi and King Abdullah, is their home constituency. And they are afraid that this is something that will create a sort of a wave of criticism that might shaken their stability, because they will be perceived as the ones who sold the Palestinians. Okay, but this is an outcome of decades of indoctrination of these constituencies against Israel. And now they are paying the price because they cannot do what they think that they have to do because of the pressure of their constituencies. I think that this is the main reason. I do not buy the other reasons, although I would say, I will rephrase it. I think that the other reasons that they introduce are less crucial. I think that the idea that the Egyptians fear that Hamas, which is the Palestinian branch of the Muslim Brotherhood, will create a sort of unrest in Egypt is a bit exaggerated. Why? Because President Trump, at least when it comes to Egypt, does not intend that that the Palestinians that will move to Egypt will live in Cairo. It means that they will live in Sinai Peninsula. And Sinai Peninsula is disconnected in a way, or detached from the mainland of Egypt. And the Egyptians have a very good control over the people of Sinai Peninsula. And there are very few people who live in Sinai Peninsula, which is 167 times bigger than the Gaza Strip. Okay, there are less than 600,000 people who live in the entire Sinai Peninsula, and 2 million people who live in the Gaza Strip. So I think that the Egyptians will be able to control very effectively the Palestinians in Sinai Peninsula. It doesn't mean that this is not, I would say, a sort of a reason to be concerned about, but it can be controlled. Now, with regard to the Jordanians, I think that we are talking about a country or a kingdom where the Palestinians are already the majority there. They are already the majority. But in the last, I would say, 15 to 20 years, Jordan absorbed more than 1.6 million refugees from Iraq and from Syria. Now, those refugees are not Bedouins as well, okay? And they are now part of the Jordanian kingdom in this way or another. They live in Jordan, they work in Jordan, They are not citizens, but they are part of the Jordanian constituency, the Jordanian society. Now, I think that the King Abdullah, exaggerates with the scale of the threat with regard to the Palestinians, because the idea is not to bring 2 million Palestinians from the Gaza Strip to Jordan, but to bring 100,000, 200,000 Palestinians from the Gaza Strip to Jordan, as well as 300, 400,000 to Egypt, and the other to some other places that were even mentioned yesterday in Channel 12 in Israel, places like Morocco, for example. But President Trump said that there are at least 12 countries that are willing to accept the Palestinians from Gaza. So talking about 100,000 or 200,000 Palestinians that will come to Jordan, this is something that will not destabilize Jordan, okay? And in this regard, I think that this is very exaggerated.
Thank you. Andy, you had a few questions. I think Kobi answered some of them, but please go ahead.
Mute. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you hear me? Do you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe the last question, because I said 3 questions. What role can Europe realistically play in this evolving scenario, given the deep complicities and shifting alliances in the region? Is there still a role for Europe?
I wish that Europe will have a more significant role, but I doubt it. I think that the Europeans are mainly concentrated in creating more obstacles. Basically, there is a bias, an inherent bias in most of the European countries with regard to Israel. And I think that the Europeans, or the EU, generally speaking, is not a very significant player in this arena, although the Middle East and Israel and the Palestinian territories are much closer to Europe than to the United States, okay? They are even closer to Europe than to Saudi Arabia. But Europe is not a significant player. I think that the Europeans can be much more significant in this regard if they will join to America, if they will join to the US, and will find a way to well coordinate with President Trump, or to tailor some ideas, not to say only no or what is not possible, but to come with some reasonable, realistic ideas and alternatives to the alternatives that are proposed by President Trump. And if they will be, I would say, able to initiate, if they will be creative enough in order to initiate some alternatives, maybe they will find a partner. Maybe President Trump will be able to do something together with the Europeans, and the Europeans will be part of that. I think that the Europeans can be much more, I would say, significant once there is something that takes place on the ground, and then the Europeans are coming to be part of that, okay? But I don't think that the EU has a sort of a leverage or a sort of a negotiating power with regard to Israel or with regard to the Palestinians.
So Aurora Minguez wants to make it even harder on you. Aurora, please. Aurora, please unmute yourself. Okay, the question is from the humanitarian point of view, many Europeans cannot accept such a massive deportation of many Palestinians who are not Hamas members but suffer a lot under their dictatorship. Is this the definitive end of the two countries solution, the two-state solution? is there any generate that the future of the Palestinians living in the West Bank are not going to be deported as well? So ask Aurora Mignaguz.
Yes, this is much more than one question. First of all, when we are talking about the humanitarian conditions, we have to ask ourselves what is exactly the alternative. I mean, if these Palestinians will remain in the Gaza Strip, will it be better from the humanitarian point of view? I'm not sure about it at all. Now, all the idea of distinguishing between the Gazans and Hamas, I would say that this is a very problematic idea. We saw exactly what happened on October 7th. First of all, thousands of civilians, of Gazan civilians, participated actively in the massacre. They are not Hamas members, but they participated actively in the massacre on October 7th. Secondly, we saw the orgy of enthusiasm in the streets of Gaza when Hamas came back with the Israeli corpse and with the Israeli hostages to the Gaza Strip, and we saw exactly what was there. And we saw what is happening there in all the demonstration of power that Hamas tries to do in each release of hostages since 2 weeks ago, and how exactly the Palestinian mob behaves. So if we are going even historically, trying to understand how it comes that Hamas became to be so popular in the Gaza Strip, okay? Hamas was elected by the Gazan constituency, and Hamas is supported by the Gazan constituency, and civilians in Gaza held in their private residential houses, they kept hostages. And the idea that they can be distinguished from Hamas or to be separated from Hamas as if they are totally innocent is something which is disconnected to the reality. We have to follow the polls since October 7 to see what is the degree of support of these people in the massacre of October 7th. Okay, there is a decrease, by the way, in the support following the polls of Khalil Shkaki. But till today, the vast majority of the Gazans still support the massacre. And the vast majority of the Gazans still support Hamas, or at least prefers Hamas on Fatah. So how exactly you can distinguish between these people, these citizens, and Hamas? It's very hard to do that. It's very hard to do that. I don't think that we should have used the term of deportation. I didn't hear President Trump say that the Palestinians will be forced to leave. The Palestinians will have the option to leave. Okay, and President Trump thinks that there should be a sort of facilitation in order to help Palestinians who want to leave the Gaza Strip. I didn't hear that he said that they will be forced to leave, that American soldiers will come and will put Palestinians on trucks and will take them by force, will deport them from the Gaza Strip. I didn't hear that.
Kobi,
it's on a voluntary base.
Two questions regarding that. First, Moshe Appelblatt is asking why do they still support Hamas? Because there is not alternative to them. This is the question. And I would add, you mentioned the Palestinian pollster Shkaki. You talked about the situation in the Gaza Strip, but isn't it the same with the Palestinian population in the West Bank? That the Hamas get the most.
It is worse in the West Bank.
Could you elaborate?
The West Bankers are more radical than the Gazans. And you know something? The most paradoxical finding is that the Palestinian Jerusalemites those who live in East Jerusalem and hold an Israeli ID. And they have all the rights of any Israeli citizen, beside two rights: to carry an Israeli passport and to vote to the Israeli parliament. They are allowed to vote to the Jerusalem municipality, but not to the Israeli parliament. But beside these two rights, they have all the rights that any citizen in Israel has. And they are the most radicals. The most radicals.
What is their source for that fact?
I think that when we are talking about the West Bank, it is much more convenient to sit there on the balcony in the West Bank, far from the events, when you are not part of the events and you don't suffer from the event, and to be very nationalist and I would say very determined and to support the Mukawama, to support the armed resistance and to support Hamas. Secondly, they are very frustrated from the Palestinian Authority. Okay, and the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank has no legitimacy among its constituency in the West Bank. And they believe that Hamas is a better alternative in comparison to the Palestinian Authority. And therefore, we can find that there is 40% support of Hamas and only 20% support of Fatah in the West Bank. Okay.
So let's go back for that. Let's go back for Moshe's question regarding the Palestinians in Gaza. Do they have any other alternative than being Hamas supporters?
Yes, of course they have. By the way, they can live even under such an authoritarian regime without supporting the regime. They don't have to be part of the regime. They don't have to be part of I would say the activities or the operations of the regime. They can live their life without being Hamas, without being affiliated with Hamas. Okay, but they had a different alternative. They had the Palestinian Authority in the Gaza Strip until June 2007. And I think that now they might have a better alternative instead of Hamas, but I'm not sure that they will support such an alternative. Okay, we are talking about a very problematic psychological infrastructure that was built and was elaborated during decades in the Gaza Strip, and the minds of the people there are poisoned, just poisoned. I mean, the idea that people can go out to the streets and to participate in such an orgy of enthusiasm after the massacre of October 7th, and to do what they did in October 7th, this is something that I think indicates about the illness of this society, about the illness of this psychological infrastructure.
Thank you. Carmelo, please unmute yourself.
Thank you very much for that very interesting speak. I wonder if they are so support, as you say, and I really believe that they are. Is there any possibility that we can, or Israel or United States or whoever, can take off Hamas from the power in Gaza? That is not a much longer and even harder war? Thank you very much.
Yes, I'm sure about it. By the way, Israel could have done it during the war itself and in a shorter period of time. But we have to remember that the hands of the state of Israel, or at least one hand, was tied behind its back. With all the respect to the American administration and its support, this American administration, I mean Biden administration, was very problematic. I mean, this administration forced Israel to enter humanitarian aid to active war zone. It's something that it is not less than absurd. Okay, we are fighting in the northern part of the Gaza Strip, in Jabalia area, against Hamas, and the American administration forces us to enter during the active war, to enter humanitarian aid to this area, to whom? To the hands of Hamas. This administration actually worked against Israel with regard to the humanitarian aid supply to the Gaza Strip, although this administration knew that this humanitarian aid is used by Hamas in order to supply itself and in order to strengthen itself and in order to control more effectively the territory and the population. Most of the humanitarian aid was stolen by Hamas and was used for its purposes, and part of it was sold to their people for very high prices. The American administration didn't allow Israel to use all of its military might. This administration, I mean Biden administration, also put an embargo on Israel, partial embargo, but embargo on Israel. This administration didn't enable Israel or made it very difficult for Israel to evacuate civilians from active war zones in order to minimize, on the one hand, civilian casualties, and on the other hand, to make it easier to fight Hamas and to destroy Hamas. I think that now things have been changed, and we heard President Trump, and President Trump expects Hamas to fulfill the agreement in its entire. And President Trump said loud and clear that Hamas will not be part of the solution. Hamas will not remain in the Gaza Strip. And when he was asked what will be if Hamas will not fulfill the agreement, he said, we are going to be more violent. These were his words. And he used the term we. He didn't say Israel, he said we. What does it mean, we? It means that Israel, backed by the United States, will be unable to do what it was supposed to do during the first phase of the war, which means that America will back Israel first to use all of its military might against Hamas. Secondly, to evacuate civilians from active war zones. Thirdly, not to enter humanitarian aid to active war zones. And fourth, to minimize or to decrease at least the humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip. And by doing that, Israel will be able, and I think that it will be in a relatively short period of time, something like 3 months, to occupy all the Gaza Strip, to dismantle Hamas as an effective, organized military and governmental entity. Hamas will not be anymore the sovereign power of the Gaza Strip, to establish a temporary military administration that will take care or will be responsible for the supply of the humanitarian aid to the people and will facilitate the conditions for the reconstruction of the Gaza Strip, which means that this military administration, temporary military administration, will enable the conditions for the establishment of a local administration that might be affiliated even with the Palestinian Authority, but it will be a local administration, which is not Hamas, of course, supported by a regional mission force that will enter the Gaza Strip and will train and support this local administration. And then, step by step, strip by strip, the Israeli military administration will withdraw from an area, will secure it from outside, and will enable the local administration together with the regional mission force to run the territory and the population and to begin the reconstruction process. And then another strip. Israel will withdraw, the local administration with the mission force will enter, and in 3 to 4 steps, along, I don't know, 1 to 2 years period of time, the IDF will completely withdraw from the Gaza Strip. A local administration will be there. It will take more 3 to 5 years until this local administration will have the full responsibilities. It must be done in a very gradual, responsible, and controlled manner. And then in 5 years' time, something like that, a local administration will be able to control the Gaza Strip and the reconstruction process will take place. Will it be a very successful reconstruction process where 2 million people live in this teeny populated area? I'm not sure at all. But it might be much better than today. Okay? But nothing will happen in the Gaza Strip as long as Hamas remains there. Nothing. We must understand that. And nobody from one edge of the wall to another edge of the wall will be ready to enter the Gaza Strip in order to fight Hamas. Nobody will do that. The only entity in the entire world which is capable to do that is the IDF. And therefore, if we want to begin something new, and if we want to have a sort of a future to the Palestinian people in Gaza and to the entire region, we have to dismantle Hamas. We have to eliminate Hamas. Now, eliminated Hamas doesn't mean that we will reach to the last terrorist or to the last rocket. No, we will still face and tackle terrorism and guerrilla warfare, like we tackle such terror and guerrilla warfare in the West Bank. But it will not be an area under the control of Hamas. Hamas will not be the sovereign power, and Hamas will not be able to function as an organized military apparatus or as an organized governmental apparatus.
Kobi, as
and
we are
without that, nothing will happen.
As we are concluding this very, very interesting session, I would like to conclude with two questions. First of all, as we all know, on this coming Saturday, there should be more Israeli hostages to be released. Do you see any dangers for the implementing of the next stages of the hostages deal due to Trump declaration?
Yes, but I think that not in a high probability. I think that we must take it into consideration. This is an option that Hamas will decide that it is in a such such bad condition that he stops everything and he will try to pressure Israel and the others and to take it to the edge. But I think that there is no high probability of that scenario. I think that the higher probability is that it will continue. I think that Hamas wants to earn time. Hamas needs time now. Why Hamas needs time? Hamas needs time, first of all, in order to establish its control and presence in the Gaza Strip and over the Gaza Strip, okay? Because the control over the Gaza Strip is the most significant and essential strategic asset that Hamas holds. And we have to remember that the end state of Hamas is to replace the Fatah and to gain full control over the entire Palestinian system, which means the Palestinian Authority and the PLO. They do not see themselves as partner of Hamas. Don't be confused. They are willing to make the facade as if they are willing to reconcile with Fatah and to be partners with Fatah. But the end state is to replace Fatah, okay? And they understand that they will not be able doing that if they will lose the control over this strategic asset, which is the control over the Gaza Strip. So they need time in order to base, in order to stabilize their control in the Gaza Strip. And as long as there is negotiation, and as long as the ceasefire continues, they have the time to do that, okay? Secondly, they need time in order to, I would say, to tighten the understandings with the Arab countries, mainly with the countries which are Arab and non-Arab countries like Turkey and Iran, but they have Qatar in mind, first of all, and the Egyptians as well. They want to tighten the coordination between of them and to assure that these countries will not go with Trump, and these countries will provide them with more time and with more opportunities, okay? So in order to tighten the coordination, they need time. They are not able to do that if now they will break the ceasefire. Thirdly, they need time because they still believe, and we have to understand that. We have to understand as Western people that their way of thinking is totally different than our way of thinking. They still believe that they will be able to make another October 7th and another October 7th. And they believe that the resistance axis, which is led by Iran and with the Iranian proxies, they believe that that this resistance axis is resilient and it will be able to reconstruct itself, and then they will be able to make another October 7th. And the fourth reason for the time that they need is the West Bank. They want to ignite the West Bank. They want to escalate the situation in the West Bank, and they work very hard, very hard. Nizar, the one who replaced Saleh al-Arouri, Nizar Jabarin, who is the head of Hamas, the leader of Hamas in the West Bank, but he is not in the West Bank. He is in Lebanon. Okay, he is well coordinated with the Hezbollah and with the Iranians. And these two, Iran and Nizar Jabarin, are making the utmost efforts in order to smuggle weapons, explosives, money through Jordan, through the Jordan Valley to the northern districts of the West Bank, in order to build the terror infrastructures there, in order to escalate the situation, in order to create more terrorism, because they want to keep the West Bank as a burning front against Israel, because they believe that where Israel is dragged to a continuing attrition war, it is weakening Israel, and it provides them with more opportunities and with more time to reorganize themselves for the next attack. And Hamas needs the time to build the capacities in the West Bank. And therefore, I think that they have much more reasons to keep the ceasefire and to continue the negotiation and to continue releasing hostages. And I do believe that they will even prefer to extend the first phase, not to reach to the realization of the second phase, to extend the first phase by agreeing to continue the negotiation, but now they will demand higher prices, which means if now they get 50 Palestinian terrorists from the Israeli prisons for one hostage, then well, they will demand 75, okay? And they will demand to have more prestigious terrorists, which are symbols for the Palestinians. And in this way, in this tactic, they will be able to extend the first phase. They will earn more time, and they will try to reorganize themselves, because they are under a huge stress now, huge stress. And they believe that Israel now is much more capable to accomplish the mission that was not accomplished in the first phase of the war.
Thank you for that. Before my last question, let's go to Sofia. Please, Sofia Tranchina, unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi. Sorry, I gotta find it again. Here. So yeah, during your speech, at some point you said Gazans and people who live in Gaza can live there freely without taking part in Hamas and support Hamas and being part of Hamas. And also that they have an option because until June 2007, they had Fatah. So I feel it's controversial because from what I know, for many Palestinians who live in Gaza, their only source of income is to work for Hamas. And also people who do not support Hamas get persecuted, tortured, thrown in jail or killed. Do I have the wrong information?
Yes, I think that you have wrong information. I wouldn't say that it is an easy life to live under such an authoritarian regime like Hamas, okay? and I will not deny that Hamas persecuted people in the Gaza Strip. But at the end of the day, okay, Hamas, and I'm talking about the military wing of Hamas, okay, the armed wing of Hamas. It was something like 40,000 people, okay, and Hamas controlled the municipalities and all the ministries, and I don't have any, I would say, problem with the water engineer of Khan Yunis municipality that got his salary from Hamas. When I do have a problem with this water engineering, when he became to be an active member of Hamas, he could have remained the water engineering of Khan Yunis municipality without being an active member of Hamas. And where exactly were the people, I mean, during the war itself? During the war itself, Hamas was very weak, right? Hamas was attacked by Israel. Why they didn't come out to the streets yelling, Hamas, go out? And they knew that they will be defended by Israel. Why they didn't do that? Why? They continued supporting Hamas. So now people will come and will say, what do you expect from them? Now they are suffering from Israel, and do you want them not to support Hamas? So they have excuses from here to Antarctica. The problem at the end of the day is that Hamas didn't prosper in the Gaza Strip from the air. At the end of the day, they succeeded to prosper in the Gaza Strip because the people of the Gaza Strip are not all of them, of course, but the vast majority of them, of the Palestinian collective in Hamas, in Gaza, generally speaking, they support the ideas and the ideology of Hamas. This is the situation. This is the reality, unfortunately.
Kobi, to conclude this very interesting session, you were talking before about Western thinking and the Palestinian thinking. There is a gentleman that is a NATO partner, but I think he desired to have even a bigger role in the Middle East. And of course, I'm talking about Erdogan of Turkey. What is the role he's playing right now?
Yes, first of all, in order to be more accurate, I didn't say the Palestinians, I said Hamas, okay? The ideology of a religious movement, okay? And there is a difference. I think that Erdogan and Turkey becomes to be a very, very, I would say, challenging and complex issue for Israel. Turkey, of course, supports Hamas together with Qatar. Erdogan and the EIPA is the Turkish version of the Muslim Brotherhood, okay? And this is the reason that they support the Hamas, which is the Palestinian branch or the Palestinian version of the Muslim Brotherhood. And I think that Erdogan can play a very negative role. He can disrupt some efforts, and not only in the Gaza Strip, but mainly through Syria. And he can try to pressure Israel through Syria in order to gain some achievements with regard to the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. He is a NATO member, but I think that he feels that he has a very wide space to maneuver, okay? And the idea that he does what he does, that Turkey does what it does in Syria, is something which is not less than amazing. I mean, they eventually gain an effective control over Syria, and they perceive Syria as another sanjak, which is the Turkish term of a district or something like that, of the new Ottoman Empire, okay? We have heard that just yesterday they probably signed on an agreement that Turkey will build the future Syrian army and will train it and will equip it. And they agree that Turkey will build military bases, Turkish military bases in Syria, and Turkey will provide Syria with air defense. And we know that Israel has interest in Syria, and Israel has to be very cautious with regard to the developments in Syria, and Israel will have to act in Syria if there will be any sort of escalation, deterioration, or any trial of jihadi movements or organizations to operate against Israel from Syria. Now, what exactly is going to happen there when the Israeli Air Force will enter to Syria and will find there the anti-air missiles batteries of the Turks? Okay, this is a very sensitive situation that Israel has.
Do you see it as a dangerous for Europe as well?
For Europe?
Yes. Having such a NATO member,
I think that it might cause some tensions between Turkey and some European members of NATO. Not a direct danger to Europe, but I think that it is more dangerous to Israel and to the region, talking about the potential influence of the new regime in Syria on some neighboring countries, just for example, Jordan, okay, which is a very fragile country and can be destabilized by a Syrian regime that will be supported by the Turks. And by the way, the Turks do not intend to stop in Syria. They intend to reach Jordan, and they intend to reach Jerusalem. You know, in a conference that took place I think in Istanbul, something like 4 or 6 weeks ago, Erdogan made a speech there, gave a speech there, and then the crowd shouted, "Free Al-Aqsa, free Al-Aqsa," and he told them, "Be patient, be patient. We will free Al-Aqsa as well." Okay, so
Al-Aqsa as for the temple in Jerusalem, yes.
Yes.
Mosque in Jerusalem.
So even if he doesn't mean, the idea that he says that, okay, is something that I would say ignites the tension between Israel and Turkey, and it's something that makes Israel very concerned about the situation in Syria and about the Turkish position in Syria. And now the Turkish have demands from Israel about the buffer zone, okay? I mean, Israel controls now something like 80 square kilometers of the buffer zone. Israel entered to the buffer zone in order to assure the buffer zone will not be controlled or will not be taken by the jihadi organizations there. And Erdogan demands from Israel to withdraw from the buffer zone and to give back the buffer zone to Syria, where Turkey occupies for more than a decade 8,800 square kilometers in North Syria, and they began Turkishize the area, okay? They bring Turkish citizens to these places, Turkish flags, the Turkish lira there, the curriculum in the schools is a Turkish curriculum. So they occupied 8,800 square kilometers, and they demand from Israel to withdraw from the buffer zone when Israel said that he didn't conquer that and he didn't intend to annex it to Israel. It is very temporarily until things will be clarified there. Okay? So this is Erdogan, this is Turkey, and we are going to tackle and to face some challenging days.
Thank you very much, Professor Kobi Michael. Always enlightening, always interesting. I would like to thank you all for being with us, and hope to see you in one of